I still remember the night my life fell apart. I pushed open the restaurant door, smiling to myself. I had been planning this surprise dinner for Emily all week. Tonight is going to be perfect, I whispered under my breath. The waiter greeted me. Table for two. I'm meeting someone, I said. Emily Parker. He pointed toward the corner. She's already here. I followed his hand, and froze. Emily was sitting at the table. But she wasn't alone. Ryan sat across from her. My best friend. Their hands were touching on the table. For a second, my brain refused to understand what I was seeing. I took a slow step closer. Emily laughed softly. Ryan leaned forward and said, "Relax. He still has no idea." They both laughed. My chest tightened. I walked to the table. "Hey," I said quietly. Emily looked up. Her smile vanished. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" Ryan leaned back in his chair. "Well," he muttered, "this is awkward." I stared at them. "Emily. Ryan, what is this?" Emily quickly pulled her hand away from his. "It's not what you think." Ryan snorted. "Come on, Emily." I looked at him. "Explain." He shrugged. "Fine," he said. "You walked in at the wrong time." Emily glared at him. "Ryan, stop." I felt my voice shaking. "Emily, tell me the truth." She avoided my eyes. "Daniel, we were going to tell you." "Tell me what?" Ryan crossed his arms. "That she's been seeing me." The words felt like a punch to my chest. I stared at Emily. "Tell me he's lying." She stayed silent. "Emily," I whispered, "please." She finally spoke. "Daniel, it just happened." "What happened?" "We got closer." Ryan added casually, "Much closer." "Ryan," I snapped, "stay out of this." He raised his hands. "Relax." I looked back at Emily. "How long?" She hesitated. "Emily," I repeated, "how long?" 3 months. My heart dropped. 3 months. She nodded slowly. Ryan leaned forward. "You have to admit, man," he said, "you never noticed." I felt anger rising inside me. "You're my best friend." Ryan shrugged. "Things change." Emily whispered, "Daniel, please don't make a scene." "A scene?" I repeated, "You're cheating on me with my best friend." People nearby started staring. Emily lowered her voice. "Please sit down." "I'm not sitting down." Ryan said calmly, "You should." I looked at him. "Why?" "So we can talk like adults." I laughed bitterly. "Adults." Emily finally looked me in the eyes. "Daniel, I didn't plan for this to happen." "But it did." She nodded. Ryan spoke again. "Look, man, Emily deserves someone who understands her." I clenched my fists. "And that someone is you." "Apparently." Emily said quietly, "Daniel, things between us haven't been good for a while." "That's not true." "You've been distant." "I've been working." Ryan smirked. "Exactly." I felt my hand shaking. "So while I was working, you two were doing this?" Emily didn't answer. Ryan did. "Pretty much." I slammed my hand on the table. "Ryan." "Hey," he said calmly, "don't blame me alone." Emily whispered, "Please stop." I looked at her. "Do you love him?" She hesitated. Ryan said confidently, "She does." Emily finally nodded. "Yes." That single word crushed something inside me. For a moment I couldn't speak. Ryan leaned back. "Look, Daniel, I know this is hard." "Hard?" I repeated. "But it's better you found out now." Emily added softly, "I didn't want to hurt you." I stared at her. "You already did." Silence filled the table. Ryan said quietly, "Maybe we should all move on." I laughed bitterly. "Move on." Emily whispered, "Daniel." I stepped back. "You know what hurts the most." Neither of them answered. "I trusted both of you." Ryan looked away. Emily looked like she wanted to say something. but I didn't give her the chance. I hope you're happy, I said. Then I turned around. Daniel, wait, Emily called. I stopped walking, but I didn't turn back. Ryan's voice came from behind me. Take care of yourself, man. I walked out of the restaurant. The night air felt cold against my face. My chest hurt. My hands were still shaking. I whispered to myself, everything is gone. And in that moment, standing alone on the street, I realized something painful. The two people I trusted the most had just destroyed my life. That was the night I lost everything. I barely slept after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Ryan's voice again. 3 months. I sat in my kitchen staring at my phone when it buzzed. Olivia. My sister. I answered. Daniel, she said immediately. You sound terrible. What happened? I sighed. Emily cheated on me. Silence. Then Olivia said, with who? My best friend. Another pause. Ryan. Yeah. Daniel, you're joking. I wish I was. Olivia's voice softened. Where are you right now? At home. I'm coming over. Olivia, you don't. I'm already grabbing my keys. 20 minutes later, she knocked on my door. I opened it. She looked at my face and said quietly, you look like you haven't slept in days. I haven't. She walked in and sat at the table. Tell me everything. I sat across from her. I walked into the restaurant, I said slowly. They were already there, laughing. Olivia shook her head. I can't believe Ryan would do that. Apparently he can. She leaned forward. How long? 3 months. Olivia's eyes widened. 3 months. Yeah. That means, Daniel, that means people probably knew. Her words hit me harder than I expected. What do you mean? She hesitated. Think about it. They weren't hiding for 3 months without someone noticing. I stared at the table. That means everyone else knew before me. Olivia sighed. I'm sorry. Later that afternoon, I met my friend Kevin for coffee. As soon as I sat down, he looked nervous. Daniel, I heard what happened. Did you? He rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah. I stared at him. How long did you know? Kevin avoided my eyes. Kevin. He sighed. A few weeks. My stomach tightened. You knew, and you didn't tell me. I didn't know how. You could have tried. I thought maybe it wasn't serious. I laughed bitterly. 3 months isn't serious. Kevin looked guilty. I'm sorry, man. I stood up. I need some air. That evening I was sitting in my apartment when someone knocked. I opened the door. Ryan stood there. Hey, he said. I stared at him. What do you want? Can we talk? Why? Because we've been friends for 15 years. I stepped aside reluctantly. 5 minutes. He walked in and looked around. You cleaned. That's what people do in their own apartments. Ryan sighed. Daniel, I know you're angry. Angry? He nodded. I get it. I crossed my arms. Then explained something. Okay. Why? Ryan rubbed his face. Emily and I, we didn't plan it. You keep saying that. It's the truth. So what happened? We just started talking more. I laughed quietly, behind my back. Daniel. No, answer the question. Ryan hesitated. Yes. I nodded slowly. Then she told me she wasn't happy. With me. Yeah. I felt something twist inside me. And you thought the best solution was to date her. Ryan shrugged. She fell out of love with you. You sound very confident. That's what she said. And you believed her. Ryan looked at me carefully. Daniel, be honest with yourself. About what? You were always busy. I was building a career. And she felt alone. So you stepped in. Ryan sighed. It wasn't like that. It looks exactly like that. He sat down. Look, man. You and Emily were already falling apart. That doesn't give you the right to betray me. Ryan rubbed his temples. We didn't want to hurt you. I stared at him. You already did. Silence filled the room. Ryan finally said, maybe this was meant to happen. I laughed bitterly. Really? Yeah. Explain. Maybe Emily and I are just more compatible. I shook my head slowly. You're unbelievable. Ryan stood up. Daniel, I came here to fix things. Fix what? Our friendship. I stared at him in disbelief. You think we are still friends? We could be. You stole my girlfriend. She chose me. And that makes it better. Ryan didn't answer. I walked to the door and opened it. Leave. Daniel. Now. He stood there for a moment. Then he sighed and walked out. Before leaving, he said quietly, I hope someday you understand. I closed the door. Then I whispered to myself, I understand perfectly. They weren't sorry. Not Ryan. Not Emily. They believed they had done nothing wrong. And in that moment I realized something important. If they wanted to move forward without guilt, then I would move forward without them. 3 weeks passed after Ryan left my apartment. I tried to focus on work. I tried to stop thinking about Emily. Most days I failed. One morning I opened my mailbox and saw a white envelope. My name was written in neat handwriting. I frowned. Who sends letters anymore? I muttered. I walked upstairs and dropped the envelope on my kitchen table. Something about it felt strange. I finally opened it. Inside was a thick card. For a second my brain didn't understand what I was reading. Then the words became clear. Emily Parker and Ryan Walker request the honor of your presence at their wedding. My hands froze. What? I whispered. I read it again. And again. The date was printed in elegant letters. 3 months from now. I laughed under my breath. This has to be a joke. I flipped the card over. It wasn't. My phone buzzed on the table. Olivia. I answered. Hey, she said. How are you doing today? You're not going to believe this. What happened? I just got a wedding invitation. That's normal. Not when it's from your ex-girlfriend. Olivia paused. Wait, what? And my ex-best friend. Another pause. You're kidding. I wish. Daniel, tell me you're joking. I'm staring at it right now. What does it say? Emily Parker and Ryan Walker. Olivia sighed loudly. That's unbelievable. They're getting married. How soon? 3 months. That's insane. I sat down. They even invited me. Why would they do that? That's exactly what I'm wondering. Olivia sounded angry. That's disrespectful. Or arrogant. What do you mean? They think I'm completely defeated. Olivia said quietly, you don't have to go. I know. Actually, you definitely shouldn't. I looked at the invitation again. They expect me to refuse. Of course you should refuse. Maybe. Olivia hesitated. Daniel, what are you thinking? I'm thinking they want to show everyone they won. They didn't win anything. They think they did. Olivia sighed. Just throw the invitation away. Maybe. We talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. I placed the card back on the table. I couldn't stop staring at it. Later that evening my phone rang. Ryan. I stared at the screen. Of course, I muttered. I answered. What do you want? Ryan sounded relaxed. Hey, Daniel. Don't pretend we are friends. He chuckled lightly. I just wanted to make sure you got the invitation. I got it. So, you coming? You seriously called to ask that? Yeah. Why would I attend your wedding? Ryan paused. Because you're important to us. I laughed bitterly. Important. You were part of our lives for years. You mean before you betrayed me? Ryan sighed. Daniel, we've already talked about this. No, you talked. I listened. Well, things worked out the way they were supposed to. Did they? Yeah. So now you want me to celebrate it? Ryan said calmly, it would mean a lot if you came. I could hear the arrogance in his voice. You're unbelievable. Why? You stole my girlfriend. She chose me. And now you want me to clap at your wedding? Ryan sounded slightly annoyed. You're being dramatic. Am I? Yes. I stayed quiet for a moment. Then I asked, why did you invite me? Ryan hesitated. I thought it would be the mature thing to do. The mature thing? Yeah. You think this makes you look good? I think it shows there are no hard feelings. I laughed again. There are definitely hard feelings. Ryan's voice grew colder. Look, Daniel, you can stay angry forever or move on. I am moving on. Good. Just not the way you expect. Ryan sounded curious. What does that mean? I looked at the invitation on the table. Then I said slowly, I'll come. Ryan seemed surprised. Really? Yes. Well, that's great. Don't sound so shocked. I honestly didn't think you would. I didn't either. Ryan laughed lightly. Good. Then I'll see you there. Yeah. Take care, Daniel. He hung up. I placed my phone on the table. The apartment was completely silent. I stared at the invitation again. Then I whispered to myself, I'm going. Not to congratulate them. Not to forgive them. I'm going because I need to see it with my own eyes. I need to face the truth completely. Only then can I finally walk away. And for the first time since the betrayal, I felt something strange. Not anger. Not sadness. Determination. The morning after I decided to attend the wedding, I stared at myself in the mirror and whispered, you can't show up there as the guy they destroyed. My reflection looked exhausted. Is this really who I am now? I muttered. Later that day at work, Lucas noticed something was off. You look like you haven't slept in a week, he said, leaning against my desk. I probably haven't, I replied. What happened? I hesitated. Long story. Lucas crossed his arms. Try me. I sighed. My girlfriend cheated on me with my best friend. Lucas blinked slowly. Wow, that's brutal. They're getting married. What? In 3 months. And they invited you? Yeah. Lucas shook his head. That's either incredibly stupid or incredibly cruel. I'm going, I said quietly. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I refuse to look like the broken guy they think I am. He studied me for a moment. Then you'd better start fixing yourself. I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Lucas grinned. Step 1. Stop looking like you're about to collapse. Thanks for the support. I'm serious, he said. You need a reset. A reset. Gym. Focus. Work. New routine. I leaned back in my chair. You think lifting weights will fix betrayal? No, Lucas said calmly. But it'll fix how you see yourself. That sentence stayed in my mind all day. That evening I walked into my apartment building and heard my neighbor Sarah watering plants in the hallway. Hey, she said with a smile. You've been quiet lately. Just busy. She tilted her head. That sounded like a lie. I laughed softly. Maybe it was. She leaned against the wall. Want to talk about it? I hesitated before saying, my girlfriend left me for my best friend. Sarah winced. Ouch. They're getting married soon. And they invited you? Yes. She blinked. That's bold. I'm going. Sarah studied my face carefully. You don't sound angry. I was angry, I said. Now I'm just tired. She nodded slowly. You know what the worst part of betrayal is? What? It makes you feel like you weren't enough. Her words hit harder than I expected. That's exactly how I feel, I admitted. Sarah crossed her arms. Well, they don't get to decide your worth. I looked down at the floor. It doesn't feel that simple. It never is, she replied. But healing starts when you stop giving them power. Later that night, I opened my laptop and stared at the gym membership page. This is stupid, I muttered. But I clicked join anyway. The next morning, I met Lucas outside the gym. You actually showed up, he said, surprised. Don't get used to it. Lucas laughed. Trust me, after leg day you won't want to come back. An hour later, I was gasping for air. This is torture, I said. Lucas grinned. Pain means progress. I hate that sentence. You'll love it later. Over the next few weeks, my routine slowly changed. Work, gym, sleep. One evening after a workout, Lucas tossed me a water bottle. You're different lately, he said. How? You stand straighter. That's just sore muscles. No, Lucas said. It's confidence. I didn't answer, but part of me knew he was right. Later that week, Sarah knocked on my door. Hey, she said. I baked cookies. Is this charity? She laughed. No, it's neighbor diplomacy. I took the plate. Thank you. She looked at me carefully. You seem better. I'm trying. What changed? I realized something, I said. What? I can't control what they did, but I can control who I become after it. Sarah smiled softly. That's a powerful realization. I leaned against the doorframe. They probably think I'm still miserable. Are you? Sometimes, I admitted, but not like before. Sarah nodded. That's progress. As the weeks passed, something inside me shifted. The pain didn't disappear, but it stopped controlling me. One afternoon, Lucas sat beside me at work. So, he said casually. So what? When's the wedding? 2 weeks. Lucas whistled. You ready? I think so. You nervous? A little. Lucas leaned back in his chair. Remember something. What? The guy walking into that wedding isn't the same guy who walked out of that restaurant. I thought about that for a moment. You're right, I said quietly. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror again. But this time, I didn't see the same broken man. I saw someone stronger. Someone calmer. Someone who had survived betrayal and kept moving forward. I looked at my reflection and said quietly, They think they destroyed me. I paused. They're about to see how wrong they were. A week before the wedding, I found myself at a small party Lucas dragged me to. Come on, Lucas said. You need to socialize again. I'm not in the mood. You haven't been in the mood for months. I sighed. Fine. 1 hour. Deal, he said, grinning. The party was louder than I expected. Music, people laughing, glasses clinking. I grabbed a drink and leaned against the wall. Lucas nudged me. Relax. Nobody here is your enemy. Let's hope so. A few minutes later, a guy walked over and stared at me. Hey, you're Daniel, right? Yeah, I replied cautiously. He nodded slowly. I'm Mark. Ryan's cousin. My stomach tightened. Oh. Mark scratched the back of his neck. This is awkward. You think? He laughed nervously. I didn't realize you'd be here. Neither did I. Mark looked around before lowering his voice. Look, I've been meaning to talk to you. About what? Ryan. I crossed my arms. What about him? Mark hesitated. You probably don't know this, but Ryan's always been weirdly competitive with you. I frowned. Competitive? Yeah, Mark said. For years. That makes no sense. I'm serious, he insisted. Every family gathering, every conversation, he'd bring you up. What did he say? Mark sighed. He'd say things like Daniel always has everything easy. I shook my head. My life hasn't been easy. I know that, Mark replied. But Ryan never saw it that way. So stealing my girlfriend was, what? A victory. Mark looked uncomfortable. I think, yeah. I stared at my drink. That's insane. He used to say something else too. What? That one day he'd prove he was better than you. I laughed bitterly. By betraying me. Mark shrugged. I'm not defending him. I'm just telling you what I heard. Why tell me now? Mark looked guilty, because watching all this happen felt wrong. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then I said quietly, "Thanks for being honest." Mark nodded. You deserve to know. Later that night I stepped outside for air. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Hey," she said when I answered. "Where are you?" "Outside a party." "That sounds dangerous." "I'm surviving." She laughed softly. "Listen. I heard something today." "What?" "It's about Emily." My chest tightened. "What now?" Sarah hesitated. "She's been talking about you." Not surprised. "But the things she's saying, they're not good." "Try me." "She's telling people you were controlling." I felt anger rise in my chest. "What?" "And that you were unstable." "That's a lie." "I know," Sarah said quickly. "But people believe what they hear first." I paced slowly along the sidewalk. So she destroys my reputation to justify what she did. That's usually how people protect themselves. I exhaled slowly. It still hurts. I know. For a moment we were both silent. Then Sarah asked, "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "You don't sound okay." I just realized something. "What?" "They're building their entire story on lies." Sarah nodded. "And lies eventually collapse." "That's what I'm starting to understand," I replied. "You're stronger than they think," she said. "I'm not trying to be strong." "What are you trying to be?" "Free." Sarah was quiet for a second. I like that answer. The next day at the gym, Lucas noticed I looked different. "You're thinking hard again," he said. "I learned something last night." "Good or bad?" "Both." "Tell me." I wiped sweat from my face. Ryan spent years competing with me. Lucas frowned. For what? I guess he believed my life was easier than his. Lucas laughed. That's ridiculous. I know. So his solution was to steal your girlfriend? Apparently. Lucas shook his head. That's not competition. That's insecurity. Exactly. Lucas leaned against the bench. So what are you going to do? Nothing. Nothing. Yes. Why? Because the more I learn, the clearer everything becomes. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Explain. Their relationship started with betrayal, I said. Yeah. It's built on jealousy. Also true. And now she's spreading lies about me. Lucas crossed his arms. That's not exactly a healthy foundation. Exactly. Lucas smiled slowly. So you're realizing something important. What? You don't have to destroy them. I nodded. They're already doing that themselves. Lucas pointed at me. That right there is growth. Later that evening I met Sarah in the hallway again. You look calmer, she said. I feel calmer. Did you figure something out? Yeah. What? I leaned against the wall. For weeks I thought I needed revenge. And now? Now I think the truth is enough. Sarah smiled softly. Truth has a way of showing up eventually. I believe that. She studied my face for a moment. Are you still going to the wedding? Yes. Why? I looked straight ahead. Because when everything finally comes out, I want to be there to see it. Sarah nodded slowly. You've changed a lot. I had to. And Emily. What about her? Sarah asked quietly, do you still love her? I thought about that question for a long moment. Then I shook my head. No, I said. What do you feel? I exhaled slowly. Nothing. And for the first time since that night in the restaurant, that answer felt true. The morning of the wedding felt strangely calm. I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my jacket. "You actually look confident," my sister Olivia said from the doorway. "I feel different today." "Nervous?" "A little." "Want my honest opinion?" she asked. "Always." "You don't need to go." "I know." "So why are you going?" I took a slow breath. Because running away would mean they still control my story. Olivia crossed her arms. "You're stronger than I expected." I had to become stronger. She walked closer and straightened my collar. "If they try to humiliate you." "They won't." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'm not the same person anymore." She studied my face for a moment. "Okay," she said quietly. "Then go show them that." An hour later, I stepped into the wedding hall. The room went quiet. I felt dozens of eyes on me. Someone whispered, "Is that Daniel?" Another voice said, "I thought he wouldn't come." I walked calmly toward a seat near the middle. Lucas appeared beside me. "You made it," he said. "You sound surprised." "A little," he admitted. I sat down. "This is going to be interesting." Lucas leaned closer. "People are staring." I noticed. Across the room, I saw Ryan standing near the altar. His smile faded when he noticed me. Lucas followed my gaze. "Oh wow," he whispered. "He just saw you." Ryan tried to keep smiling, but his jaw tightened. "Good," I said quietly. "You're enjoying this." "Not exactly." "Then what?" "Clarity." Lucas chuckled softly. "You're mysterious today." A few minutes later, music filled the room. Guests stood as Emily walked down the aisle. She looked beautiful. For a brief moment my chest tightened. Then her eyes met mine. She stopped walking for half a second. Lucas whispered, "She looks shocked." Emily quickly looked away and continued toward the altar. Ryan leaned toward her and whispered something. She nodded stiffly. The ceremony began. The officiant smiled warmly. "Welcome everyone to this beautiful celebration of love." Lucas muttered, "Awkward start." I kept my eyes on the couple. Ryan glanced at me again. His smile looked forced. The officiant continued. "Ryan and Emily have chosen to unite their lives today." Lucas whispered, "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You're very calm." I expected to feel anger. "And?" "I don't." Ryan began his vows. "Emily," he said, "from the moment we grew closer, I knew you were special." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Grew closer," he whispered. I almost laughed. Ryan continued. "You understand me in ways nobody else does." Emily nodded, but I noticed her eyes drift toward me again. Lucas whispered, "She keeps looking at you." "I see that." Emily began her vows next. "Ryan," she said softly, "you came into my life when I needed change." Lucas murmured, "That's one way to describe it." I listened carefully. "You helped me realize what I truly wanted," Emily continued. Ryan squeezed her hand. The words sounded romantic, but something in her voice felt fragile. The officiant finally said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Applause filled the room. Lucas clapped slowly. "Well," he said, "it's official." Ryan kissed Emily. Then he glanced at me again. For a moment our eyes locked. I gave him a calm nod. Lucas whispered, "That probably confused him." "Good." Later the reception began. Music played while guests moved around the hall. Lucas handed me a drink. "To survival," he said. I raised my glass. "To moving forward." A woman approached me. "Daniel." "Yes." "I'm Claire, Emily's co-worker." "Nice to meet you." She looked nervous. "I didn't expect to see you here." Most people didn't. Claire lowered her voice. "Honestly, I admire your courage." "Thank you." She hesitated. Emily seems tense. I noticed. Claire glanced toward the dance floor. "She keeps asking where you're sitting." Lucas leaned closer. "See," he whispered. Claire excused herself. Lucas grinned. "You're the most interesting guest here." That wasn't my goal. Maybe not, but it's working. Across the room, Ryan approached us. Lucas whispered, "Showtime." Ryan forced a smile. "Daniel," he said. "Ryan. I'm surprised you came. You invited me." Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, I appreciate it." Lucas stayed silent beside me. Ryan glanced at him. "Hey, Lucas." "Ryan." The tension felt thick. Ryan cleared his throat. "Look, today is important." "I know. I hope there's no hard feelings." I stared at him for a moment. "No hard feelings." Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "I mean, we've all moved on." Lucas almost choked on his drink. I replied calmly, "Yes, we have." Ryan looked relieved. "Good." Then Emily walked over. Her smile faded when she saw me. "Daniel," she said quietly. "Emily." She looked nervous. "I didn't think you'd come." I told Ryan I would. Emily glanced at Ryan. Then she said softly, "Why are you here?" I answered simply, "Closure." Ryan laughed awkwardly. "Well, I hope you found it." Emily kept staring at me. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yes." "You seem different." "I am." She looked confused. "I thought you'd hate us." Lucas whispered under his breath, "That would make sense." I ignored him. "Hate takes too much energy," I said. Ryan forced another smile. "Well, that's good to hear." Emily still looked unsettled. "I'm glad you're okay," she said quietly. "Thank you." Ryan clapped his hands together. "All right," he said. "Enjoy the party." They walked away. Lucas leaned closer. That was the most awkward conversation I've ever witnessed. I watched them across the room. Emily whispered something to Ryan. Ryan shook his head. Lucas followed my gaze. They looked stressed. They should be. Why? Because they expected a broken man to show up today. Lucas smiled. But instead, I said calmly, they met someone they don't understand anymore. The reception grew louder as the night continued. Music played while people laughed and talked around the tables. Lucas leaned back in his chair beside me. "This wedding is getting more awkward every minute," he said. "I can feel the tension too," I replied. Lucas nodded toward the bar. "Look who just arrived." I followed his gaze and saw Mark walking toward us with a drink in his hand. Ryan's cousin looked slightly unsteady. "Oh," Lucas whispered. "He looks drunk." Mark stopped at our table and squinted at me. Well, he said loudly. "If it isn't Daniel." "Hello, Mark." He laughed. "I didn't expect you to show up tonight." Most people didn't. Mark pulled a chair and sat down heavily. Lucas glanced at me. "This might get interesting," he murmured. Mark raised his glass. "To bravery," he said. I replied calmly, "I'll drink to that." Mark took a large sip and leaned closer. "You know something funny?" he asked. "What's that?" Mark chuckled. "Ryan used to talk about you all the time." Lucas frowned. "What do you mean?" Mark shrugged. "Oh, come on. Everyone knew." I looked directly at him. "Knew what?" Mark waved his hand carelessly. "That Ryan always competed with you." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Competed?" Mark laughed again. "Yeah. School, work, girls, everything." I stayed silent. Mark leaned back and spoke louder. He used to say, "One day I'll prove I'm better than Daniel." Lucas looked surprised. "Seriously?" Mark nodded. "Oh yeah." He pointed toward the dance floor where Ryan and Emily were greeting guests. "You see that bride over there?" he said. My chest tightened slightly. Mark smirked. "Ryan once told me something about her." Lucas leaned forward. "What did he say?" Mark laughed loudly. "He said stealing her from Daniel would prove he finally won." The table went quiet. Lucas stared at him. "Wait, what?" Mark shrugged again. "Ryan literally said that." I spoke slowly. "He used the word stealing?" Mark nodded. "Yeah." Lucas shook his head. That's messed up. Mark took another drink. Ryan always hated losing to you, he continued. I didn't even know we were competing, I said. Mark snorted. Well, Ryan definitely thought you were. Lucas leaned toward me. Did Emily know about this? Mark laughed again. Oh man, I have no idea. Unfortunately, Mark had spoken loudly enough that people nearby started listening. A woman at the next table whispered to someone. Soon several guests were looking in our direction. Lucas muttered, This is spreading. Mark didn't seem to notice. He stood up suddenly and raised his glass. You know what's funny? He shouted. Several people turned toward him. Ryan finally won tonight. Lucas grabbed his arm. Mark, maybe you should sit down. But it was too late. Emily was walking toward us. Her expression looked tense. Mark, she said sharply. What are you talking about? Mark blinked at her. Oh, hi Emily. What did you just say? Mark scratched his head. Nothing important. Emily crossed her arms. I heard you mention stealing. Ryan quickly rushed over. What's going on here? He asked. Emily pointed at Mark. He's saying something about you stealing me from Daniel. Ryan's face paled. Mark, he said quietly. Stop talking. Emily looked directly at Ryan. Is it true? Ryan forced a laugh. Of course not. Mark suddenly laughed again. Oh, come on, Ryan. Ryan glared at him. Mark, shut up. Mark shrugged. You literally said it. Emily's eyes widened. What? Ryan looked furious. You're drunk. Mark waved his glass. But I remember that night clearly. Emily stepped closer to Ryan. Ryan, answer me. Ryan sighed. It was a joke. Emily shook her head. That didn't sound like a joke. Ryan glanced around nervously. Guests nearby had stopped talking. Everyone was listening now. Emily's voice became sharper. Did you start chasing me just to compete with Daniel? Ryan ran his hand through his hair. Emily, you're overreacting. I want the truth. Ryan looked frustrated. I liked you. Emily stared at him. That's not what I asked. Lucas whispered beside me. This is exploding. I remained silent. Emily pointed at me. Did you seriously turn my relationship into some kind of game? Ryan raised his voice. It wasn't a game. Mark muttered. You literally called it a victory. Ryan snapped at him. Mark, leave. Emily's face turned red. Answer me. Ryan hesitated. The silence felt heavy. Finally he said quietly, maybe at first, it was about proving something. Emily stepped back as if slapped. Are you serious? Ryan quickly added, but then I fell in love with you. Emily shook her head slowly. So I was just part of your competition. That's not fair, Ryan argued. Emily laughed bitterly. Not fair. Guests around us whispered. Ryan looked desperate. Emily, please calm down. Emily pointed toward me again. You betrayed your best friend just to prove you were better than him. Ryan said nothing. Emily's voice trembled. Did you ever actually love me? Ryan opened his mouth but couldn't answer immediately. That silence said everything. Emily covered her mouth. This whole marriage started with jealousy. Ryan tried to grab her hand. Emily, listen. She pulled away. Don't touch me. Lucas whispered, this wedding is collapsing. I watched quietly. Ryan looked at me briefly. For the first time all night, he looked small. Emily stared at him with disbelief. You lied to me, she said. Ryan shook his head. I didn't lie. You manipulated everything. Ryan rubbed his face. Emily, please, we are married now. Emily laughed again. That's exactly the problem. The perfect wedding image had finally cracked. And for the first time that night, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry. I was simply watching the truth unfold. The room felt tense after Emily's last words. Ryan looked frustrated and embarrassed. Emily, he said quietly, this isn't the time for this conversation. Emily laughed bitterly. Not the time, she repeated. Several guests were staring openly now. Emily crossed her arms. You just admitted you chased me to beat Daniel. Ryan sighed. I said that wasn't the whole reason. Emily shook her head. That's not what I heard. Ryan looked around nervously. Everyone is watching. Emily raised her voice. Maybe they should watch. Ryan clenched his jaw. Can we talk about this privately? Emily laughed again. Oh, now you want privacy. Ryan stepped closer. Emily, please. She took a step back. No. I want answers. Ryan rubbed his face. You're blowing this out of proportion. Emily stared at him. Am I? Ryan looked frustrated. Yes. Emily pointed toward me across the room. You spent years competing with him. Ryan looked annoyed. So what? Emily's eyes widened. So what? Ryan shrugged. Everyone competes with someone. Emily shook her head slowly. You destroyed a friendship. Ryan's voice hardened. That friendship wasn't perfect. Emily frowned. What does that mean? Ryan glanced at me briefly. It means Daniel wasn't as innocent as you think. I felt Lucas shift beside me. Emily narrowed her eyes. What are you talking about? Ryan spoke louder now. You constantly compared us. Emily looked shocked. That's not true. Ryan laughed bitterly. You said Daniel had the better job. Emily stayed silent. You said Daniel was more confident. Emily looked away. You said Daniel had his life together. Emily finally spoke again. I was just talking. Ryan shook his head. No. You were judging me. Emily crossed her arms again. So you decided to steal me. Ryan snapped. I didn't steal you. Emily's voice rose. Then why did you chase me? Ryan shouted back. Because you kept talking about him. The room went quiet. Emily stared at him. Ryan continued angrily. I was tired of hearing his name. Emily whispered, That's insane. Ryan shook his head. No. What's insane is pretending this marriage started with love. Emily's face went pale. What are you saying? Ryan laughed without humor. You like the idea of choosing me over him. Emily looked stunned. That's not true. Ryan stepped closer. You told me once it felt exciting. Emily shook her head quickly. I never said that. Ryan's voice dropped. You said it felt like rebellion. Emily looked around at the staring guests. Stop talking. Ryan didn't stop. You said Daniel was too perfect. Emily's eyes widened. I said he was stable. Ryan scoffed. Same thing. Emily pressed her hands against her temples. This is insane. Ryan crossed his arms. You wanted drama. Emily looked furious. That's not why I left Daniel. Ryan smirked slightly. Then why did you? Emily hesitated. The silence felt heavy. Ryan laughed quietly. Exactly. Emily looked at him with disbelief. You're twisting everything. Ryan shook his head. No. I'm finally saying the truth. Guests nearby started whispering louder. Someone near the door quietly left the room. Emily noticed. People are leaving, she said. Ryan looked around. So what? Emily whispered, This is our wedding. Ryan rubbed his face again. Then maybe stop arguing. Emily laughed bitterly. You started this. Ryan pointed toward Mark. He started it. Emily shook her head slowly. No. Ryan frowned. What do you mean? Emily looked directly at him. You started it the moment you turned my relationship into a competition. Ryan said nothing. Emily's voice softened, but the anger remained. You manipulated everything. Ryan exhaled slowly. You're not innocent either. Emily looked stunned. Ryan continued quietly. You enjoyed the attention. Emily's face turned red. That's not fair. Ryan shrugged. Neither was the situation. The room felt colder now. I sat quietly at my table. Lucas whispered beside me. Do you realize what's happening? Yes. They're destroying each other. I watched Ryan and Emily standing in the center of the room. Their voices had grown quieter, but the damage was already done. Lucas asked softly, "Are you satisfied?" I thought about the question for a moment. Then I shook my head. "No." "Then what are you feeling?" I looked at the collapsing scene in front of me. Guests whispering, chairs moving, a wedding falling apart. And strangely, my chest felt light. "I feel free," I said quietly. The argument behind me kept growing louder. Guests whispered and moved around the room nervously. Lucas looked at me. "You're really calm," he said. "I feel calm," I replied quietly. Ryan and Emily were still arguing near the center of the reception hall. Emily's voice suddenly rose again. "You humiliated me tonight." Ryan answered angrily, "You humiliated yourself." Lucas shook his head slowly. "This is painful to watch." I stood up from my chair. Lucas looked surprised. "You're leaving?" "Yes." "Already?" "There's nothing left for me here." Lucas nodded slowly. "You're right." He stood up too. "Want me to walk out with you?" I smiled slightly. "I'll be fine." Lucas patted my shoulder. "You handled this better than anyone expected." "I didn't do anything." "You didn't need to." Lucas glanced toward Ryan and Emily again. "They did it themselves." I nodded. "That's the truth." Lucas gave me a small smile. "Call me tomorrow." "I will." I walked away from the table and toward the exit. As I passed several guests, I heard quiet whispers. "Isn't that Daniel?" "Yes, that's him." "I can't believe he came." "Did you hear what Mark said earlier?" The doors of the venue were only a few steps away. Behind me, Emily shouted again, "Ryan, answer me." Ryan yelled back, "I already did." The noise faded as I pushed the doors open. Cool night air greeted me outside. For a moment I just stood there. My chest felt lighter than it had in months. "Daniel." I turned my head. Sarah was standing near the sidewalk. Her expression looked worried. "You came," she said. "Yeah." She walked closer. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually attend." I needed closure. Sarah studied my face carefully. "Are you okay?" I thought about the question. Then I nodded slowly. "Yes." She looked surprised. "Really?" "Yes." Sarah crossed her arms gently. "I expected you to be angry." I was. "And now?" I looked back toward the building behind me. Inside, the chaos continued. Voices echoed faintly through the walls. "Now I feel finished." Sarah tilted her head. "Finished?" "With the past." She looked relieved. "That's good." We stood quietly for a moment. Then Sarah asked softly, "What happened in there?" I exhaled slowly. The truth came out. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "What truth?" Ryan admitted he chased Emily to compete with me. Sarah's eyes widened. "He admitted that in front of everyone." "Yes." She shook her head. "That's unbelievable." Mark helped reveal it. Sarah sighed. "That man drinks too much." I laughed quietly. "Yes, he does." Sarah looked back at the building. "I can still hear them arguing." "So can I." "Do you feel satisfied?" I considered the question carefully. Then I answered honestly. "No." Sarah looked confused. "You don't?" "No." "Why not?" "Because revenge isn't what I wanted." Sarah studied me. "What did you want?" "Peace." She nodded slowly. "And do you have it now?" I looked up at the night sky. For months my mind had been full of anger. Every memory hurt. Every thought felt heavy. But now something inside me had changed. "Yes," I said quietly. Sarah smiled slightly. "I'm glad." She hesitated before speaking again. "You know, when you first told me about Emily and Ryan." "I remember." "You looked completely broken." "I was." Sarah nodded. "But tonight you don't look like that person anymore." "I'm not that person anymore." She smiled warmly. "That's good." I placed my hands in my pockets. The betrayal hurt. Sarah listened quietly, but it forced me to grow. She nodded again. Sometimes pain does that. I looked back at the wedding venue one last time. Lights still glowed through the windows. Inside those walls, Ryan and Emily were still trapped in their own mistakes. But I wasn't. Sarah spoke softly beside me. So what happens now? I smiled faintly. Now I move forward. And leave them behind. Yes. Sarah nodded approvingly. That sounds like the healthiest decision. We began walking down the sidewalk together. The night air felt calm and quiet. For the first time in months, my mind felt the same way. I wasn't running from the past anymore. I was finally walking away from it. 6 months after the wedding, my life feels completely different. One evening I sit with Sarah at a small cafe near my apartment. She looks at me across the table and smiles. "You look happier," she says. "I feel happier," I reply. "That's good." I take a sip of coffee. Sarah studies my face for a moment. "You've changed a lot." "In a good way." "Yes," she says. "You're calmer." "I guess I had to grow." Sarah nods. Pain forces people to grow. "That's true." She leans back slightly. "So tell me something." "What?" "Do you ever think about them anymore?" I know exactly who she means. Sometimes. And it doesn't hurt anymore. Sarah raises an eyebrow. "Really?" "Really?" She smiles softly. "That's progress." I nod. "It is." Sarah taps her fingers lightly on the table. "I heard something interesting last week." "Oh." "About Ryan and Emily." I shrug. "I figured you might." "Do you want to hear it?" I pause for a moment. Then I nod. "Sure." Sarah sighs quietly. Apparently their marriage isn't going well. That doesn't surprise me. She continues. "A friend told me they argue constantly." I stay quiet. Sarah watches me carefully. "You don't look happy about that." I'm not. "Why not?" "Because their problems don't matter to me anymore." Sarah smiles slightly. That's probably the healthiest response. I laugh softly. I spent months angry. I remember. And now I just feel indifferent. Sarah nods slowly. That's real closure. I look out the cafe window. People walk along the sidewalk outside. Life moves forward for everyone. Sarah breaks the silence. "How is work going?" "Better than ever." "Really?" "Yes." She smiles. "I knew things would turn around." "I got promoted last month." Her eyes widen. "You didn't tell me that." I wanted to wait. "Why?" "I wasn't sure it would last." Sarah laughs. "You're still cautious." "Maybe." She raises her coffee cup. "Well, congratulations." "Thank you." We clink our cups lightly. Sarah leans forward again. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For rebuilding your life." "It wasn't easy." "I know." I think about the months after the betrayal. The sleepless nights. The anger. The confusion. But those days feel far away now. Sarah watches my expression. "What are you thinking about?" "The past." She nods slowly. "Do you regret anything?" I consider the question. Then I answer honestly. No. Not even trusting them. Trusting people isn't a mistake. Sarah smiles. That's a good way to look at it. I learned something important. What? Betrayal says more about them than it does about me. Sarah nods approvingly. That's very true. I lean back in my chair. You know something strange. What? If Emily hadn't betrayed me. Sarah waits. I might still be stuck in the same life. She tilts her head. What do you mean? I was comfortable. And that's bad. Not always. But sometimes comfort stops you from growing. Sarah nods slowly. That makes sense. I pushed myself harder after everything happened. And now look at you. I smile slightly. Exactly. Sarah looks thoughtful. So in a strange way. The betrayal helped me. She laughs quietly. That's a powerful realization. It is. We sit quietly for a moment. Then Sarah speaks again. Do you think Emily regrets what she did? I shrug. Maybe. And Ryan? Probably. Sarah studies my face again. You really don't care anymore. No. She smiles warmly. That's freedom. I nod. Yes. A waiter walks by and asks if we want anything else. Sarah orders another coffee. I order tea. When the waiter leaves, Sarah looks at me again. I want to ask you something. Okay. What do you want now? What do you mean? Your future. I think about it carefully. For a long time, my future was tied to Emily. Sarah listens quietly. But now it isn't. So what do you want? I want peace. And a life that feels honest. Sarah smiles. That sounds like a good goal. What about you? I ask. She laughs softly, turning the question on me. Why not? Sarah thinks for a moment. I want something similar. Peace. Yes. And happiness. That too. We both laugh. The conversation feels easy. Natural. Nothing like the complicated relationships I had before. After a moment, Sarah looks at me seriously. Daniel. Yes. I'm glad we met. So am I. You were going through a difficult time. I still remember our first conversation. She smiles. You looked miserable. I probably was. But you kept moving forward. I had help. Sarah raises an eyebrow. From who? From people like you. She smiles warmly. That means a lot. Outside the cafe, the evening sky begins to darken. Streetlights turn on one by one. I look around the quiet cafe. For the first time in a long time, my life feels stable. Sarah notices my expression. What are you thinking now? That everything turned out differently than I expected. Different in a good way. Yes. She smiles. Sometimes life works like that. I used to think losing Emily ruined my future. And now I see it differently. Sarah waits. Losing the wrong people made room for the right life. She nods slowly. That's a beautiful way to say it. I smile. For months I believed betrayal had destroyed everything. But sitting here tonight, I finally understand the truth. It didn't destroy my life. It changed it. And sometimes change is exactly what we need to find a better future, and at the end I hug Sarah and kiss her. After that we live together happily.